Ever feel like life just isn't fair? Just isn't fair. Like you're driving down 131, you're keeping up with everybody else, and everybody's speeding. But for some reason, you get the red and blues behind you. They were going faster than I was. That's not right. Everybody's zooming by. Or, okay, maybe you're in school, you're slaving on the group project, and you're Hermione, doing all the work, yet the group gets all the credit. They all get the A for your hard work. That's not fair, is it? Or you're the Lions and you're in the playoffs, and there's a clear penalty by Dallas, but the referees walk over and say, "Oh, my bad. There was no penalty on the play," and Dallas wins. It's not fair. If there's a sting that you feel when things are unjust, that's your soul crying out for justice. God put that within you. He wired you that way. So today we're going to dive in to perhaps the greatest injustice in all of history. The day Jesus faced a rigged trial so that you wouldn't face a guilty verdict when you come before him. So buckle up, because this story, every one of us is in this, okay? So how is it supposed to be? Just and perfect. Nothing missing, nothing broken. That's how the world is supposed to be. So let's begin at verse 1 of chapter 23, and we're going to read a couple verses, then take a break and talk a little bit, okay? So the whole company of them, the whole company of all these people that were arresting Jesus, they arose and they brought him before Pilate, the governor, the local governing authority. And they began to accuse him, these Jewish leaders. They were accusing him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." Okay, so picture this. It's barely sunrise. Jerusalem's buzzing because of the festival of the Passover that's going on. These religious bigwigs are dragging Jesus to Pilate's doorstep like he's public enemy number one. We caught him. So Pilate, Rome's representative, looks down at this bound Jewish teacher and probably had a mild curiosity and an obvious sense of inconvenience, because Pilate's probably thinking, I can't even finish my golden grams here this morning before you stiff-necked Jewish people come and insist on a trial. Can I at least finish my coffee? And they hit Jesus with lies. They're lying about Jesus left and right. And it's all garbage, because Jesus literally said, "Pay Caesar, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's." But the truth, that is not their game, because these Jewish leaders, they simply wanted him gone. And this isn't how justice is supposed to work. From the beginning, as we said, God established human authority on earth to uphold the good and to punish evil. And as Paul would later write, a ruler is, quote, God's servant for good. He does not bear the sword in vain. Justice should be blind. Justice should be impartial and unwavering. I think inside us we know that. But here, in this makeshift courtroom, this kangaroo court, justice is being twisted beyond recognition. Lies are being used to cover up the leaders. Jesus is on trial. Truth is on trial. And the power, they're playing dirty just to save face. And if that feels wrong, it's because it is wrong. Justice is supposed to reign in this world. So if you feel that sense of sting, like this is not right, that's because God has wired us for justice. Look at Proverbs 17. He who justifies the wicked and who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. What we see happening in this courtroom is an abomination. It should cause some unrest in your heart. God is just, and he hates perverted justice. And that's Jesus' trial, perverted justice. The religious leaders were not sloppy, though. They were being strategic. They were spinning these sort of half-truths to paint Jesus as this rebel, as a modern, it's like a smear campaign against Jesus. Take a good person's words, twist them, and watch the mob eat it up. So this should make us upset. Pilate's questioning Jesus privately. So you can imagine the Roman governor. He's trying to assess whether this humble teacher really is a threat to him politically. So he asks, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus' answer was both a confirmation and a challenge. Look what he says. "You have said so." So after this little chat, Pilate emerges out to the crowd with his verdict. "I find no guilt in this man." Case closed, yes? It's all done. Go free. An innocent man should go free. That's how justice works. The glove don't fit, so Pilate must acquit. That's how it's supposed to be. But this system is broken, my friends. The crowd, they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all of Judea, from Galilee even to this place." So instead of letting Jesus go free, as he should have, if Pilate were a just leader, justice would demand that he go free. Pilate instead just sort of wusses out and says, "Galilee, you say? This cat's from Galilee, that is Herod's jurisdiction, not mine." So Pilate had to be happy. This is not my problem. We're going to let Herod deal with this. This so-called king of the Jews. Since Herod is half Jewish anyway, we're going to let him deal with it. So Pilate sent Jesus, it says, over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at the time. Deuteronomy 16:19 in the Old Testament tells us that you shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality. Pilate knew Jesus was innocent, yet he wavered. And how often do we do the same? James 4:17 says, "Whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin." Pilate knew what the right thing was to do, but he passed the buck. Proverbs 24:11 and 12 says, "Rescue those who are being taken away to death. Hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, 'Behold, we did not know this,' does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who keeps watch over your soul know it? And he will not repay a man according to his work?" God sees when we dodge our solemn duty to intervene on the behalf of the vulnerable. And he warns that God's going to judge those who hold claim that they are ignorant when they see someone being treated unjustly. Pilate has blood on his hands, and God is watching, and he says, "I see your unjust works." So now the story moves over to Herod's place. Herod saw Jesus, and he had to be glad because he long desired to see him, because he heard about all the stuff about him. He was maybe hoping to see some magic. Look what it says here in verses 8 to 12. It says, "The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing Jesus, and Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate." So Herod Antipas here, the ruler who executed John the Baptist, was delighted to meet Jesus, not from reverence, but out of curiosity, like a carnival sideshow. He wanted to see a miracle on demand, entertainment for his court. Herod is pumped up. Just imagine like the kid waiting for the Marvel movie to premiere. All right, this is going to be cool. He wants Jesus to pull a Jedi trick. And what was Jesus' response? But silence. He wasn't going to pretend to be a TikTok magician or put on a show. It was a fulfillment of Isaiah 53. He was oppressed. He was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. And Jesus fulfills this right here in Herod's court. Matthew 27, in Mark's account, said he made no answer, not even to a single charge. So Herod had to be frustrated by Jesus' silence. So Herod joins into the mockery and starts mocking him. His soldiers start draping expensive robes on Jesus' shoulders, a cruel parody of his royalty, and then sends him back to Pilate. So we're back at Pilate's mansion, verse 3. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, "You brought this man to me as one who's misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of the charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." So Pilate gathers everybody together, made his declaration, "I find no guilt in this man. Herod find no guilt in this man. Nothing deserving death has been done. The glove don't fit. You must acquit." But what's he say? "I will therefore punish him and release him." He just got done saying this man's innocent. He's done nothing wrong. And still he feels he's going to punish him. He should go free without a scratch. And if he's guilty, then face the appropriate penalty. But this middle ground, this punishing an innocent man, violates every principle of justice. Instead of facing down these Jewish leaders, he found some mushy middle ground which didn't please anybody. Exodus 23 warns us, "Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill an innocent or righteous, for I will not acquit the wicked." Pilate's compromise here defies God's standard. Romans 13 says rulers are to praise what is good, not to punish it. Yet Pilate is punishing Jesus. And the crowd listened to Pilate's verdict. And a custom of theirs came to mind. Each Passover, the governor would release one prisoner as a gesture of goodwill. Usually someone who was like a political prisoner, didn't do something truly wrong, but just ticked off the Roman occupiers. Look at verse 18. "But they all cried out together, 'Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas, a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city,'" and get this, "and for murder." Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." So this crowd's response was immediate and unified. "Away with this man, give us the murderer Barabbas," an actual insurrectionist. Everything they accused Jesus of, falsely, Barabbas was guilty of. Pilate tries again. What evil has he done? "I found no guilt in him deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him." But the crowd says, "No, crucify him." And their voices prevailed, and justice was perverted. Acts 3:14 echoes this. Listen, "You denied the holy and righteous one and asked for a murderer to be granted to you." Old Testament, Leviticus 16, "The scapegoat was sent away like Barabbas, while Jesus became the sacrifice." We pick back up at verse 26. "As they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Jesus. And there followed him a great multitude of people and of women who were mourning and lamenting for him." So Jesus is already weakened from being beaten and flogged, undeservingly. And now he's stumbling under the weight of this cross, and the Roman soldiers grab this bystander, Simon of Cyrene. Imagine that. You're just walking into town from the country. "Hey, what's going on?" And suddenly you get drawn into this execution. That's how brutal the Romans were. And so here they are walking the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering, the path of sorrows, up through the city, then up the hill. And as they walked, it says there were women weeping openly. And Jesus, even in this suffering, is turning to them with words of compassion and warning about days to come. And in this moment, we see something remarkable here, guys. Jesus is experiencing the greatest injustice ever committed, and he's still thinking about others. I get pulled over and I'm ticked. I'm ticked. I'm still upset about the Lions call. Jesus is focused on these women who are weeping. And then Mark 15:21 adds that Simon's sons, Rufus and Alexander, were with him. Why would that even be mentioned? Why would that be necessary to include it? Well, the mentions of his sons, Alexander and Rufus, it leads me to conclude that they weren't nobodies. These were probably believers that were known by the church. So Mark wrote this letter about the gospel account of Jesus' life, and he mentions these two guys because he knows the original audience knows these guys. It's making a case for the reality that this really happened. And if Simon's boys were part of the early church, that means Simon was perhaps forever changed by this chance encounter when he walked into the town and the Romans said, "Here, you're going to carry this man's cross." So this Simon of Cyrene got a first-person, up-close experience of the horror of crucifixion. And that Roman cross, the crucifix, it's a well-earned reputation. Rome didn't invent it. The Persians invented the cross, but the Romans, they perfected it. So just pause a little bit to talk about it. I'm not going to get too graphic, but around 30 A.D., when Jesus faced the cross, Rome was using this punishment to crush and to shame its enemies. So slaves, rebels, people like Barabbas, often non-citizens, it wasn't just about killing, it was about control. Victims were stripped, sometimes naked, mocked, and they would hang there so the crowds could mock them and spit on them. So think of a busy spot outside of town, and they would line the streets. There's this hill where most of the crucifixions would take place called Golgotha, the hill of the skull hill kind of thing. So crosses that they used, some of them are really tall, some of them were only about 6 feet tall. And that meant passersby could see the pain up close. They weren't that high up off the ground. Have you been around someone who's suffering, wailing for help, gasping for air? And imagine that. Not off miles away, not hundreds of yards away, but as close as the person is next to you. So you could stare into this stranger's face and see the struggle that they face just to breathe. And the agony could last for hours. It could last for days as the victims were gasping for air. And they were pushing up against their back, and they pulled more on their hands and their feet. So blood is dripping from their wounds. And so that space at Golgotha where the crucifixions took place, the ground was stained with blood. Rome didn't try to hide this tool. They flaunted it along roads near the cities. They posted crucified criminals as a way to scream, "Do not cross Rome. We will defeat you. This will be your fate." So for Jews, it was worse because it was a cursed death. Deuteronomy 21:23 says that cursed is anyone who is hanged on a tree. And the cross is made from the core of a tree. That's why the Sanhedrin wanted Jesus crucified, because it branded him as accursed and discredited. No Messiah, no king would ever die that way. So what did they ask? Crucify him. So Rome's tool of control, we see here, this wicked, horrible, awful tool of control, ended up becoming the symbol of redemption. We have one right there. Many of you are wearing one around your neck right now. Some of you have it tattooed on your body. Crucifixions were common. Thousands died this way, but Jesus's was unique because it was fulfilling Old Testament prophecies. Like Psalm 22:16, they pierced his hands and his feet. Let's read verse 33 and 34. And when they came to the place they called the skull, there they crucified him. And the criminals, one was on his right, one was on his left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So Golgotha's nightmare, this skull hill, blood-soaked. You can hear the screams everywhere. It was like a scene from Gladiator, but real. With practiced efficiency, Roman soldiers, executioners, laid Jesus on the rough-hewn beams. They stretched out his arms, pressing his wrists against the splintered wood. As the hammer fell, iron spikes tore through his flesh, shattered his bones, severed the nerves. My friends, do not miss that you and I are in this story. And I know I usually warn you, don't read yourself into the story. In this case, we're all over it. With each blow of the hammer, they were driving home our rebellion against God. As they hoisted him up, his body's full weight hanging on those wounds, every breath a new battle against suffocation. And there he was, between two criminals, exactly where all of us belong because of our sin, because of our injustice against a just God. And instead of his first words being Jesus cursing the soldiers, cursing the leaders, cursing the people watching him joyfully, cursing his friends as they run for the hills, instead of cursing all of them and calling down an army of angels to wipe them out, what were his words? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Just sit in that for a moment. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Even in the midst of his suffering, he was thinking of others. He was thinking of you. While the blood ran down his face from the crown of thorns, while his back lay open from the scourging, while his body convulsed in pain from the nails, his heart was focused on forgiveness. Not vengeance, not condemnation, forgiveness. Forgiveness of the soldiers gambling for his clothes, forgiveness for the crooked leaders mocking his claims, forgiveness for his disciples who abandoned him, forgiveness for you and for me whose sins drove the nails through his hands and through his feet. The soldiers shrugged and went about their business. Just another execution, just another Friday for them. They had no idea they were killing their very creator. Seriously, my friends, Jesus could have spoken a word and erased them all from existence. He who called the stars into being with just his word could have burned the whole place down. One thought, and the cross would have been splintered, and the earth opened up, and his accusers all just falling down and consumed into the earth. But he did not choose that. Because this was no mistake. This was his plan from before creation. As you've heard from this pulpit many times, it was not nails that held him there. It was love. This was love's ultimate expression. And the people stood by watching, but the rulers scoffed at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he's the Christ of God, his chosen one." They yell, "Save yourself, chosen one." Don't get this wrong. Jesus could have saved himself. He is God. But he won't. Because he's got you on his mind in this moment. Look closely at verse 32, 33 here. Two others who were criminals were led away to be put to death with him. And when they came to the place that's called the Skull, they were crucifying him. And the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Okay, this is not an accident. Isaiah, 700 years earlier, prophesied that the Messiah would be, quote, numbered with the transgressors. The only truly innocent person who ever lived is positioned between two guilty criminals in the very place that we should be. And in the most profound exchange in the history of the world, that's exactly what's happening here. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." Did you catch that? Jesus became what we are so that we could become what he is, righteous. The perfect Son who had existed in flawless communion with the Father forever. for all eternity, became sin itself. So the horror of this moment, it should exceed your comprehension. The Holy One of God taking into himself everything unholy. The righteous one becoming what he hates. All for you. But others rebuked him, saying, "Do not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation. And we indeed justly, for we're receiving the due reward for our deeds. But this man, he's done nothing wrong. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus says to him, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." So one of the criminals here, he recognized this moment for what it is. See, we're getting exactly what we deserve. This man, he's done nothing wrong. So with his hands nailed wide, as his life is bleeding out, he has nothing to offer Jesus. No religious resume. He's a criminal being executed for the crimes that he committed. No good deeds. No time to do any good deeds. No time to clean up his act. No time to be baptized. No time to memorize a catechism. He gasped 7 words that changed his entire eternity. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus, struggling for breath himself, gives an answer that should get your attention. "Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Guys, look at me here. That's you if you trust in him. That's you. Today you can be with me in paradise. That's you if you trust Jesus. Grace, not your resume, grace is what saves you. Do not miss this. A lifelong criminal, justly convicted, receiving in his dying moments what none of us want. He's getting crucified. And he gets what none of us deserve. Perfect acceptance. No probation, no purgatory, no let's wait and see if you're really sorry. You catch that? That's you. Today, paradise with me. This man deserved hell and he gets heaven. He deserved wrath and he got welcome. He deserved judgment, but he received forgiveness. That's not fair, is it? You're right, that's called grace. And grace, not your resume, is what saves you. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "By grace you have been saved through faith." This is not a work of your own doing. It is a gift of God. So this thief's faith, because he had no works but sin, his faith is what saved him. Titus 3:5, he saved us, not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to his own mercy. Jesus promises this criminal paradise. That was all mercy. Look at verse 44. "It was now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two." So it's high noon. High noon in the Middle East. Should be scorching. Should be darkness now swallowing the land. It's like it wasn't an eclipse. This was creation itself recoiling as its creator became sin. For 3 hours, Jesus is hanging in darkness there. For 3 hours, the Father turned his face away from his beloved Son. For 3 hours, Jesus experienced the hell of separation from God that we all deserve. In the Jerusalem temple in town, the priests continued their rituals, probably oblivious to what was happening up on the hill, when suddenly a massive curtain, 60 feet high, thick as a man's hand, a barrier that separated God's presence from the people, was torn from top, it says, to bottom. Not from the bottom to the top. This wasn't some priest doing this. This was an act of God from on high. A declaration from God. The message thundered through the cosmos. The separation is over. The way is open. What religion could never accomplish, reconciliation with the Father, has now been achieved. The temple curtain rips. Boom. God's saying, no more walls between us. It's like tearing down a keep out sign. Jesus opens the front door. And then Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last breath. Jesus' final words came from Scripture. Psalm 31. Words of complete trust. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Even as darkness covered him, even as the weight of your sin, even the weight of my sin crushed him, his trust in the Father never wavered. And with that, the King of Kings died a criminal's death. So understand what happens in this moment. This wasn't a tragedy. This was a triumph disguised as defeat. This wasn't the failure of God's plan. This was the fulfillment of God's plan. This wasn't just a good man dying for some cause. This wasn't just a martyr's brave end. This was the most holy transaction in history. This was the moment when every sin you've ever committed or ever will commit was placed on Jesus, and his perfect righteousness was credited to your account. The penalty of your sin paid in full. Picture a courtroom. You are guilty. You have no defense. The evidence is obvious. The gavel drops, and suddenly the judge's son storms in and says, No, Dad, I'm going to take it for him. Let him go free. We do not deserve any of this. The innocent one condemned so you can go free. The perfect one punished so you could be pardoned. Every false accusation, every corrupt decision, every mocking voice he heard, every hammer blow, all part of the rescue mission planned before time began. And friends, Jesus was not plan B. He was plan A. Adam failed. Jesus was plan A all along. God's determination to love you at any cost cost him himself. He didn't hold anything back. Because Jesus was forsaken, you are accepted. Because Jesus was condemned, you are forgiven. Because Jesus cried, My God, why have you forsaken me? You will never have to cry that. Because Jesus died, you can live. Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, who loved me and gave himself for me. You have been crucified with Christ. He gave himself willingly for you. Not just this like sinners. You, personally, your name, your face was on his mind. He didn't just die for humanity. He died for you. He died for the person next to you. He gave himself for you, for the person on the other side of you. Do you believe that? In this is love, not that we have loved God, but he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation, the perfect sacrifice for our sins. Or Romans 5:8, God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus' death was proof of his love for you and his love for me. And now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God. The centurion praised God, saying, certainly this man was innocent. This is a Roman centurion. He's a battle-hardened executioner. He's familiar with death. He's witnessed countless executions. He looks up at the lifeless body of Jesus and recognized what the religious experts did not see. Something about this one is different. Truly, this man was innocent. Truly, this man is the Son of God. Catch this, guys. The first praise to God after Jesus died came from a Gentile soldier who killed Jesus. You catch that? The first praise to God after Jesus died came from one who helped kill him. If there's hope for this soldier, friends, there's hope for you. This man executed the Son of God, and now he's praising him. If you think there's no hope for you, look at this centurion. No matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter how far you've run, the arms that were stretched wide on that cross are still stretched wide open for you today. The King who took your place is willing. He is willing and waiting to give you his seat, a seat of honor at his table. So how do we respond to this? What an amazing message. How do we respond to this? First, this wasn't just a king wrongly accused. This was the king taking our place. This was God himself stepping into our broken system, letting it break him instead of us, so that through his brokenness, you and I can be made whole, reconciled to the Father, reconciled to one another. Because Jesus was forsaken, we are accepted. Because Jesus was condemned, we are forgiven. Because Jesus died, we can live. My friends, this is not just a story. Don't treat this like a Bible story. This is your story. This is our story, every one of us. He saw your screw-ups. He saw your dreams, your mess. He saw it all as he was on that cross, being nailed there. He didn't die for some vague humanity. He died for you and your garbage. He took your verdicts so you could get his victory. Those women crying at Golgotha, they thought the game was over. I got a spoiler alert for you. Come back next week. Romans 6:9 says, death's got no grip on him. Friends, that's your future. That's your future now. If you're his, if you belong to him. So what now? I'd say trust him. Like the thief on the cross. Trust him as well. Say, Jesus, I am yours. Live bold. Fight lies. Share the good news. When you see injustice, fight for justice. Make things right. When you are unjust, bring that to Jesus, the good judge, and he will forgive you. When you come across something that's broken and not right, when you see the innocent being treated as guilty, when you see the vulnerable not being protected, it is now our responsibility, our good duty of gratitude that we get to be his hands and feet, creating a culture in this world of love and grace and mercy and justice. We get to be that. So don't leave here the same. Jesus' arms are open. Run to him today. John 19:41 tells us they laid him in a garden tomb, a place of endings. But gardens are where life begins. Isaiah 26 says, your dead shall live, their bodies shall rise. Jesus' body, broken on that cross, was not abandoned. The Father's plan was simply unfolding. Next Sunday, we're going to unpack Luke 24. The stone rolled away, the empty tomb, the risen king. Think about it. The same power that held Jesus on that cross, love, broke death's grip. And Romans 6:9 says, death no longer has dominion over him. That's not just history. It's our future. Because he lives, we will too. The cross paid our debt. The resurrection then guarantees our hope. So as you leave today, carry this with you. Friday's pain leads to Sunday's promise. Come back next week. We're going to see how Jesus turned a tomb into triumph. So how do we respond? Receive his redemption, like that thief on the cross. Reflect his justice in our world. Remember our King fixing our eyes on us while he was suffering and dying. Instead of anger and hatred, he thought forgiveness. When we share his story, this incredible tale of cosmic injustice transformed by divine mercy, that's your story. That's the gospel. That's our hope. That's our Savior. Amen.